This episode of Top to Bottom is sponsored by Noted Analytics. Are you tired of losing sales opportunities to the status quo? Not seeing meaningful information in CRM to help close deals? Empower your team with Noted Analytics, the first guided selling for CRM platform that uses sales methodologies like gap selling, Medic, and others to revolutionize the way revenue teams capture, evaluate, and measure sales process effectiveness. Start increasing win rates, shortening sales cycles, and growing average sales prices today. Check it out at notedanalytics.com.
And we're live.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sales Top to Bottom on this glorious, what's today? May
10th.
May 10th. I am your host, Keenan, and I'm with the lovely Becc Holland. Becc, why do you have 5 rings on your hand?
Oh, I only have
4.
4.
Why 4, Becc? Why?
They're my version of brass knuckles.
Are you punching people these days, Becc?
As you know, I talk a big game, but really, I think you described me once as a chihuahua. So I
Sounds like something I would do.
I just scare people, so they don't come at me, because once they do, I'm like, oh snap.
Mm-hmm.
My ode to David on Schitt's Creek.
My ode to David.
David.
Yes.
Well, with that,
everybody watching, wait, before you go, everybody watching, share. Everybody put the name of somebody that you think should be watching this into the comments. Let's see if we can get a bigger crowd. 2, because we don't have the mailbox, if you have questions for us in the mailbox section, put them in now so we can see them ahead of time and we'll answer 1 or 2 of your questions in the mail. What do we call it? Mail time? Mailbox. What do we call it?
the
mailbox?
inbox.
The inbox. The inbox.
Sky's the limit.
The inbox. All right. Thank you.
100%.
Sky's absolute limit. Me, the limit is business. Keenan, personal as well. You can ask anything.
This is fooling us to trust Becc.
Well, with that, we're on to the first segment of this podcast, which is
Email Teardown.
This is the segment where Keenan and Becc tear down emails and messages that were sent over to them. Now, on to the first email. This one is titled, Has a sales growth company been in touch with these 3 journalists? Hi, Keenan. Reaching out from Intelligent Relations with a quick idea for how a sales growth company can see more marketing success for less money in 2023. In short, we've simplified PR so startups like yours can pitch journalists directly and win media coverage in top-tier and niche publications. Using our DIY PR platform, you find the right journalists, draft pitches, and personalize them all automatically. To put our code where our mouth is, we ran your company through our algorithms and generated these ideas for your first 3 journalists and pitches. What do you think? 3 top journalists and pitch ideas for a sales growth company. 1, Sari Krieger, Inside Sales Magazine senior editor. She covers topics related to salespeople, sales strategies and tools, and customer success. Pitch idea, a profile of a sales growth company's unique approach to helping companies drive revenue growth through their innovative strategies and tools. 2, Zane D'Souza, Forbes small business contributor. He writes about the challenges of small business owners and how they could succeed in the market by adapting current trends. Pitch idea, an exploration of how a sales growth company is helping small businesses succeed through their innovative practices and techniques. And 3, Lisa Rouleau from Sales Hacker Magazine contributor. She writes about the latest strategies for selling in the digital age with an emphasis on technology such as AI, automation, and data science. Pitch idea, how a sales growth company is leveraging these technologies to help businesses drive more revenue growth in a competitive market. Can I offer you a quick demo? You could book a time here. Speak soon. Okay. Keenan, what are your thoughts on this email? That was a long read.
So it was, and I'm glad you did it. So the first thing I'm going to say, it took you 2 minutes to read it. Think about that for a second. But outside of that, it was long as shit. But it was a good email. That was a good email. Why? Because 1, they gave me examples, right? So she was like, look, here is a writer, a columnist, whatever you call it. Here's a columnist. This is the magazine they write for. This is the topics they write on. So what she's done is she's said, hey, it is difficult to get in front of columns. It is difficult to get PR, right? It's difficult to get people writing for you, starting with who do I write to? You go to the magazine, you got to look them up, or the newspaper, you got to look them up. Are they the right writer? You build relationships. So that is hard. So by doing that alone, she was like, oh, hey, I get it. Problem, I can't get in touch with the right people, right? 2, they're the right people in the right space. 3, here's a pitch idea. So all of that good, it addressed a problem. I think she could have done it shorter. I think she could have been more concise. I think she could have called out right in the line, hey, are you having a hard time getting attention from publications? Are you not getting the PR exposure you'd like, right? We can solve it. She started with the problem and then thrown some of that in there. I thought it was a great email. With that, because I actually took a demo.
Oh, well, with that, Becc, what do you think about this email?
I'm shocked that you took a demo as my first. I would have liked just, I didn't think you take many demos.
Let's touch on that when you're done. Go.
I agree that it should be shorter. I mean, we have a minute left. The second thing I'd add is I would try to take a guess at what Keenan is metriced on, which is going to be revenue and business growth, I would imagine, as a CEO. And I would find a way to map PR and the root cause of not being able to get in front of PR back to revenue, especially with a statistic. Like, I have to do the heavy lifting of mapping them back in my own head. Those would be my 2 corrections.
The reason I took the demo though, Becc, is because whether she did it on purpose or not, she got to a problem, right? Like, I was reading that and I was like, she's right. And it's funny, her timing was excellent because we are looking to get more PR and we're talking to people.
See, that's why I think she got your attention. It was luck. She got in front of
people could have written out to me before and said, hey, do you want more PR or something? And I wouldn't have given them the time. But what got me here was the fact that I was in control of the ability to see who I should reach out to. I can reach out to them, talk to them myself, etc. That was intriguing.
We do not have a horn, so I'm just gonna ding, 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 ding.
We're not doing my email today.
We can. However, we will be going way over time.
No.
Okay. Well,
glad I said over 2.
Well, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
Sales Mythology.
This is the segment where Becc and Keenan demystify common myths in the sales industry. So the first myth of today is I should fire underperforming reps after 60 days. Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
So I want a point of clarity first. Is this reps, do you mean SDRs or do you mean account executives?
Either.
You're going to hate me for this, but I don't think it's necessarily 100% a myth, in my opinion. There are some, well, I'll unpack it with this. France has a law, basically, that for the first 3 months, it's always a trial. And the reason is once you lock down with a French company, it's extremely hard to fire someone, like extremely hard. They're pretty much there for life. And so they have like a 3-month trial period where you get to see what they're like. Now, SDRs, I think it's more apropos because within the first usually 60, 90 days, I'm going to get a good feel of work ethic, acumen. Like the interview them starts to wear off after a couple weeks. So I get more of a feel of who they are. But account executives, it's going to be dependent upon the sale. But especially if you're talking about a longer tail sale that's like 90 days, just as a sales cycle in general. And then you got to talk about building pipeline. You got to talk about they got to get to know the company. I don't think barring that you barring that you see something really insane, like really bad behavior, discriminatory behavior, like they're giving massive leading indicators. I think it'd be a little too early to tell, especially for like an enterprise account executive, whether they're going to be successful or not. But SDRs, I'm certainly more open to the idea.
What about you? What about you, Keenan? What are your thoughts on this one?
I struggle and I swing back and forth. So I have something that I use called the results behavior matrix. So imagine behaviors on the left, on the Y quadrant. Imagine results on the X axis. Yeah. Now imagine at the top of the behavior ones, it says yes, and the bottom it says no. And then to the right, it says yes to results, and to the left, it says no. So the bottom left box means you're not demonstrating the behaviors and you're not demonstrating or you're delivering on the results. Get rid of them less than 30 days if you can. Just fucking dump them. Dump them. If they're in the top right box, they're demonstrating the results and they're demonstrating all the right behaviors, man, like shower them with love, man. Give them hugs and kisses and, shower them with love because they're the best employees you have. The difficult situations are when they're getting the results but not demonstrating the behaviors, or they're getting the behaviors but they're not demonstrating the results. Those are the difficult ones. And unfortunately, far too often, that's where most people live. Blows my mind. But so the answer is if it's early on and they're not demonstrating the behaviors and they're demonstrating results, which would be hard to believe, but let's say you have a low bar, just things, little milestones you have to make, and they're hitting those, but they're not demonstrating the behaviors in the first 60 days, get them the fuck out. Because they come in and they're already a behavioral issue, or they're not following or blending into the culture or anything like that, then that's a problem. If you can't do that shit in your first 60 to 90 days, what are you doing? That's a choice, right? So bounce them. If they are demonstrating the right behaviors in the first 60 to 90 days and not getting results, give them more time. Give them more time. Because what they're showing is that they're committed and they're trying and they're doing all the activity and they're playing the game and they're embedding themselves into the culture, but they're just having a hard time getting that going. Okay, give them time because you want those people. Like behaviors is a choice. Results isn't always a choice. It's an outcome. Behaviors is a choice. So if someone's demonstrating all the behaviors, give them extra time. If they're not, bounce them.
Got you. So the next sales myth of today is the best seller is an aggressive seller. Keenan, what are your thoughts on this one?
What does everybody think I'm going to say?
I don't know.
This isn't a myth.
Sometimes you're tough to call. Sometimes
I'm
you're
tough to call.
Sometimes you're tough to call, even for
In
me.
what regards? What do you mean?
Meaning sometimes you surprise me on what direction you're going to go. That I was like, okay.
I like that. You know why I like that? Because that shows that I'm a thinker. And I don't just get into a path and stick to that path all the time.
That it's a sign of intelligence, number one. And statistically, men are 3 times more likely to change their mind than women. Isn't that crazy?
Wow. That is fascinating. Men, wow. Would you say it's men are finicky?
3 times more likely than a woman.
Wow. Men are finicky. Okay, so here's my answer.
No, I don't think it's finicky. Keep going, though. Keep going.
Okay, here's my answer. The answer is no. No, you don't have to be aggressive to sell. You have to have drive, and you have to have commit, and you have to be determined, and you have to be willing to challenge somebody, right? So, I think to a lot of people it comes down to how one defines aggression, but you don't need to be aggressive to do anything. You just don't. And so when we try to build these sales teams and they use words like aggression and stuff like that, it's unnecessary. Like, again, you have to be able to push, you have to be able to challenge, but you don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be over the top. You don't have to be forceful. No. There are times and places that it may fit, but no, you do not have to be aggressive to be able to sell.
All right, what are your thoughts, Becc? What do you think?
I struggle. I'm right down the middle because I think that people normally, when they think of aggressive, they think of aggressive as in pushing them to close. And that, of course, I'm always a hard no. Like, you shouldn't be pushing anyone to close. You
Yep.
should be focused on diagnosing. Where I struggle with it and where I do think that it can be very, very helpful is being aggressive. A synonym for it, I was just looking it up, is determined. And so if I'm determined to diagnose, that's actually a really helpful thing. If I'm determined to study about my buyer, that's actually really helpful thing. In a lot of facets, I'm an aggressive person, meaning I'm going to aggressively study. I'm going to aggressively get something done. I'm going to aggressively focus on something. But I think in the traditional, like, parochial meaning of, like, I'm going to be aggressive to close this person or send them follow-up emails and all of that, like, all of that, of course, I'm a hard no. But if you're determined to get an initiative done, and that initiative is truly diagnosing and finding out things that they didn't know, or diagnosing quickly so that they can avoid something, I'm a hard yes.
And the last sales method today is kind of tied into the second one, but your job as a salesperson is to sell. Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. I was thinking about this today whenever I was running. I think that most people, best case scenario, are selling. They're asking questions like a lawyer asks questions. A lawyer, their job is to prove something to someone else by way of asking questions to a witness. So they're trying to not necessarily lead the person, but lead the jury to believe something based on the questions that they ask. Their static point is that this person is guilty or not guilty. And so they're trying to arrange questions in a certain way to get the witness to admit certain things so they can prove an agenda. And I believe that that's how salespeople are asking questions most of the time. You know, their agenda is they want to close them. So they're going to ask questions in a certain way to get the person to admit things about their pain or et cetera, you know, so that they can close. But if you transfer to your questions are to diagnose, then I think questions can be an incredibly positive thing. So hard no, I don't think it's to sell. I think it is to match a solution, if there is one, to a problem that person is having that is large enough that they need to solve it in the moment based on the level of impact combined with the present aggressive pain in totality of the problem. That's my view.
What about you, Keenan?
What are you thinking?
No, it's not to sell. It's not to sell at all. Your job's to help. Your job's to help. So if you start with the helping mindset, what's the very first thing that you need and to properly help somebody?
You figure out what's going on with them.
Yes. What's the one word for that?
A diagnosis.
No, close. That's what you have to do.
A
You
diagnosis.
have to understand. You have to understand.
Oh.
You have to understand, right? You have to understand. That's what the diagnosing does, is it helps you understand. So if you start with the premise that your job is not to sell, but to help, and you genuinely believe that you have to help, then your first step is, what don't I know? Or how do I understand? How can I help? And then you start from there.
Wow. Okay, hold up.
Men doesn't have a
Ding, 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 ding.
Sans power. Sans power, men.
100%. Okay, and with that,
Really quick,
yeah,
Becc,
go ahead.
where did you get the data that men change their mind 3 times more frequently than women?
There was a study that I was reading this week. Did someone ask that in the comments? I'll have to
Not
think
in the
about it.
comments, but yeah.
It was a study that I was okay. I'll get back to you, but there's a number of different psychology channels that I tune into. One very often is Todd Grande. He goes deep into.
Is he big?
No, he's actually like this little, like, he's like, hello, my name is Dr. Grande, and today we're going to dive into 8 types of humor. And he's like tiny.
Men got it. Men got it.
I did. Grande. I get it. No, but he's like this. He's like, today we're going to go into this. And he talks about like really passionate topics. And he's like, so let's talk about when 2 people have an explosive argument. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is a calculator. So I think it was on his channel, but I'll double back. I'll look through my history.
Okay, and with that,
Okay, so Greg Christensen said, you're hired to sell, but you achieve this by solving problems. Everyone has to hit a number, but there's more to it than the number. Oh, Greg, I love you, but I freaking hate those answers. It's just an inaccurate reduction, okay? Yeah, you're hired to get a number. I got it. But if you think your job is to sell to get to that number, you're not getting it. You're not hearing us. Okay? That's the problem with sales. That's the problem with sales. Just because you're hired to sell doesn't mean that the way you sell has to be selling. If you're helping, by default, you will. Let's look. Greg needs to understand this. Let me help you out, Greg. The whole concept of selling is influencing change. If you can't influence change, then they will not buy. And you do not influence change by telling people about shit or showing people shit. It doesn't work. The way you influence change is by helping people understand that their current state is untenable and intolerable. And once and only then do they determine that where I am now is not where I need to be, or I'm unable to stay there. It is not consistent where I want to be. I've got to get out of this space. I will change. Then I will talk to you about what you're doing, what you're selling, or what your solutions are, but not until then. And even then, you got to convince me that it is worth that transition. So no, I don't know what else to say. It is about helping. And once you help, the sale will come.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, Greg.
I agree with you, Keenan. That's what I meant, Keenan. Yes. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just feel like I gotta change the way the world thinks. When I see things, I can't leave it. The way people talk about sales, not Greg this time, but in general, is so whacked. And I see it every day, and it just drives me insane. So, anyways, my mission complete. Thank you for the clarification, Greg. You may continue, Min.
There we go. Okay, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
Take it or leave it.
This is the segment where I introduce common sales tactics, and Keenan and Becc let us know whether they would take it or leave it. So the first one of today.
My favorite episode, my favorite segment, whatever you call it, my favorite one.
Yes. Okay, the first one of today is sending gifts to prospects. Keenan, take it or leave it.
Leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Nope. Don't be sending gifts. Now, the asterisk to that statement is I do support sending, I don't want to call them gifts, but sending, for lack of a better, I'll stay right in the vernacular, right? It's sending gifts to prospects to get their attention to set a meeting. Now, it's a different conversation what those look like and what those should be, but I am take it for that. But to once they're in the cycle to have a relationship, or they're actually an existing customer, to send them gifts, no, not as part of the sales process. Obviously, if I have a relationship and I call them a friend, or, in my thing, that top right box, we're friends and we have credibility, yeah, okay, but that's a friend. But as a general practice, absolutely, positively not. And as a way to drive the sale, or no, absolutely not.
All right, what about you, Becc? What do you think? Take it or leave it?
I'm shocked. I have a dead-on matched opinion to Keenan in this regard.
Oh!
Exact same opinion.
Okay, well, you know what? In that case, we'll go straight into the next one. The next one is inviting prospects to events. Becc, take it or leave it.
I'm a leave it. I mean, usually it's like a customer event, and it's like to thank our customers. It's like, what, by boring them to death with a whole bunch of webinars on product releases that you could have just sent via an email. It does put pressure on the prospect to show up. I don't think that it's usually a benefit to the prospect. And it's usually at the agenda to get them to like talk to prospective customers if they are already a customer, so they can talk well about it. It seems a little sleazy to me, and it always kind of feels in that vein. So I'm never like, oh, I can't wait to go to this event. Oh, booyah, I get to go to a dinner with a whole bunch of prospects of, a tool that I just bought. So I'm a leave it.
What about you, Keenan? Take it or leave it?
Ooh. I don't pull this out very often.
It's a TVIT.
I think it's a TVIT. Here's why. Here's why. Because I was a leave it, and then I thought of a couple things, and I have experience to show these actually work. So we need more context, but as the question was asked, it is a leave it for let's go golfing or to a ball game or something like that. Okay. Now, again, barring like an invitation to the fucking Masters, right? Like, or a Super Bowl right? If you have access to the Super Bowl and you can get the CEO of one of your biggest customers to go with you, you take that. Like you take that and you run. Okay, so that's why I'm sort of a T-bit on that. There are exceptions to this rule, like I before E, right? The other one is a properly done customer event. And that's why I started drifting to leave it, because I used to work for a company that every year they would take all of their customers, all of them, to the opening day baseball game. And it became a thing, right? So when they started, it was like, I don't make this up. They had like 30 customers and they would take them. And then they had 50, 100, 500, 1,000. They would keep buying seats and people would keep coming. It was obviously, how do you say, it was choice, like it was optional. But everybody would get an invitation. They'd have a huge party out front. They started, bring this event. They made an event. People could bring their kids and family, right? And so they were known for this. So the publicity and exposure, and then it drove the culture of the company. You know what I'm saying? Like there wasn't like they weren't, like Beck's point, they weren't passing out, do work with us and pamphlets. No, it was just coming at a freaking great time. So I got to be the T-bit. There are some situations where done right can have some substantial benefit.
The last take it or leave it for today is adding your VP of sales or CRO to the demo call. Keenan, take it or leave it.
Leave it.
All right, perfect. Becc, take it or leave it.
I'm oddly enough a leave it too. We're in one accord today. They think they add value, but usually they distract from the deal and they just talk the whole time. So I find false objections to get them off the call a lot of times.
Ding, 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 ding. I'm gonna get you.
CTOs, and then they want to be like, in December, in the cold winter of December 12th of 1949, we thought that we had a problem. I'm like, kill me now. Oh my God, just kill me now. And I had to find a respectful way to be like, how do I get homeboy to shut up? Like, it blew my deals. So I would just, stop putting him in my calendar invites, because I'm like, nope. He's going to want to come in and I'm going to have to play the game and I can't do it anymore. I can't have any more cold December nights.
Okay, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast.
Nobody's offered any questions either. No one's asked any questions.
It's all good. I have two. Even though we don't have the mailbox, I brought the mailbox to y'all. It's okay.
Oh, good for men. You can ask any question you want, y'all. Literally any question.
100%.
This is a golden.
Nobody's taking it. Nobody's taking it.
Don't you worry. This next question is going to be a doozy.
What is a guilty pleasure of his? The sky's the limit.
Greg asked a question. He said, "Wait, do you
hold up? I gotta do my thing." Okay, we're on to my favorite section of this podcast, which is
the inbox.
There we go. So we put in new updated segment intro, so sometimes it's a little bit glitchy. But this is my favorite segment where Keenan and Becc answer questions from our audience. Now, you said Greg had a question.
Yes, Greg had a question. He said, when would you change VP? I guess ask a VP on a call. It says, when would you change a VP on a call? But I guess when you ask or take a VP on a call, ask whatever he's trying to say.
So what do you think, Keenan? When is there a good time to put a CR on the call?
Yeah, I think I think there is, and I think it's when if they want someone higher up to come on the call and it's questions or something like that. So we'll talk like a peer-to-peer environment, or if there's someone at the decision-making process that's at a higher level that doesn't necessarily talk with the salesperson on a regular basis, then there could be some value in bringing them in on that executive call, that senior call. Or if there is a formal presentation or a formal last call where all their stakeholders will be on it, I think depending on the VP, there's value of bringing that person on.
Oh, what about you, Becc? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I was thinking if they requested, like Keenan asked, like they said, like, hey, we want Zero to be there, but it made me shudder a little bit, because if they're doing that, it's usually because they don't think that you have enough credibility, number one, and number two, there's a lot of situations that are ringing through my head of, let's call it the stereotype of when they would do that. And it just irks me a little bit. But that would be the only time I'd really consider it. Or if, like Keenan mentioned, like you're going into an enterprise deal, it's an on-site, and they're going to have 15 people from their team, and you just need more bodies. Like you need more bodies to be there for, I don't know. That's when I would consider it.
Got you. So the first question from the first audience submission for the inbox is from Shahryar Sultan. If I butcher the name, I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
But he asked, is there a methodical way to apply gap selling when doing discovery? Keenan, I'm going to lead with you. What do you think?
I wish my man, whose name you can't pronounce, if it is a man, his name, were on the call, because my first question would be methodical. How are you defining methodical? And in absence of him explaining it or someone explaining it to me, I'm going to say no, because I'm going to interpret methodical as a method. I'm going to do a Becc. If you look in the dictionary, a method is a set of steps to perform something over and over and over. And the answer to that is absolutely not, because the way gap selling works is you ask them a question and you listen to their answer. And then based on their answer, you must ask follow-on questions. So if anything, the method is a giant if-then, and there's actually a term for it, and I forgot. It's a certain type of diagnosis that allows this to happen. So no, you cannot bring a method to to discovery and gap selling.
Becc, you have any thing to add to this?
Do I get to add to it or no?
Of course. It's opinion show, Becc.
The way my brain works, they're gonna lead with something, and it's gonna be different in a lot of cases. It's gonna be, maybe it's a root cause that's self-diagnosed, maybe it's a problem that's self-diagnosed, maybe it's a solution that they have in mind that's self-prescribed. And I'd be looking to get my arms around that and then pivot to the other items. So it's more of a method. Now, I agree with Keenan around the questions. Like, you can't know exactly finitely what questions, because you don't know how they're going to lead. But if they say, like, we need sales training, and I'm like, okay, there's a self-prescribed solution. I'm like, why do you say that? And I would go anchor in around KPIs, because I'm wanting to uncover the self-diagnosed problem. And then once I have that, I'm trying to go to the self-diagnosed root causes, if there are any. And my second echelon of steps would be around, or questions that I'm asking, is around building my own diagnosis and challenging a difference if there is one. So that's the method that's in my head. Now,
to me, that's an approach.
Yeah, well, it's a method. Like, in my head, I'm like, okay, if they led with root cause, what they think, they're like, we need better cold emails, for instance. I'm like, okay, so I have the self-diagnosed root cause. I need to go a little bit deeper and define that more, what they mean by, like, what's the current quality today, and are there any other root causes? But I know what item, like, that I need to pivot. Oh, did we hit the bell already?
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, I gave you a couple seconds, but it's okay.
Here's the new rule. You have to do it on the 00. And if we want to go past, we have to go. You have to do it on the 00 for both of us.
I thought you would like it, because I was talking about gap.
It's not that I don't like it. I just want us to be, come back.
For sure. I'll be a stickler for the rule.
If we want to keep talking, we got to do it on the 00.
Got you. Perfect. Well, in that case, for now, we're going on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
the challenge.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
This is the segment where Keenan and Becc break down a challenging subject within the sales industry. And the challenge for today is how to coach an underperforming rep. So let's start out with Becc. Why don't you start us out with this one?
Oh, well, did you mean SDR or AE?
Let's go with AE.
AE?
So if they're not hitting quota, how do you coach the underperforming rep?
Yeah. So, well, I'll lead in a way, and then we can take it a different direction at the end. But the first thing that you need to do, in my opinion, is to understand what they're doing incorrectly. So you have to take a look at. So the difference to me between coaching and training is teaching someone how to do it, and coaching is identifying where they're falling short and then displaying what they're doing to them, what they should do instead, so that you can make up the gap. So a great example is, let's say that, within the gap methodology, for instance, let's say, Keenan trains through how to identify the current state, the problem, the root cause, current impact, future impact, solution, and the gap to the future state of where they want to go. And he trains it to 15 people. Some people are going to miss the concept of how do they uncover the root cause. Some people are going to miss the piece of how to uncover the future state of where they want to go. Some people are going to stop at pain and not go to problem, but it's going to be different for every person. So the training is him teaching them, but the coaching is identify where they're going wrong in their unique specific instance to get them to move forward accordingly. So I'd say the first step is to identify, and this can be through call review, this can be through looking at their cold emails. I don't think enough people most people that I know don't know what the hell their reps are doing, honestly. They don't log into their outreach instance. They don't see how many emails they sent. They don't see what emails they sent at all. And I know that because every time I show people the amount of activity their reps have and what their activity looks like, they almost self-correct. They're like, holy crap, well, I didn't know this. And I'm like, well, that's the problem. You should be looking into that. But the first step, I digress, is to identify what that person is doing wrong in specific.
What about Keenan? What do you think?
Burn them at the stake. They'll get it straight. Fucking tie them up to that stake, and they'll get their shit together in a hurry.
Probably.
So, this is a lot here. So, I think the first thing is you got to get acknowledgement, and I'll do a little bit and pass it back to Becc. But you got to get acknowledgement that they're not performing. That's the first thing you got to do, right? They don't admit they're not performing, then you got a problem. And so either you didn't set the proper goals and they didn't understand the goals, or they're living in denial and river in Egypt. So, either one of those is a problem. You have to address that accordingly. But once you get them to acknowledge that they're not performing, you got to then understand what Becc said, why. Okay, so then that's where I go back to the 4-quadrant matrix we talked about earlier, right? So I'll plot on that. Where are they? I will literally plot them on there. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're not in that bottom quadrant, then coaching comes along. And even if they're on the bottom quadrant, depending on there'll be a little bit of coaching. So, one of the things I like to do is test the concept of effort, because I've usually found when people are underperforming, a lot of these challenges around effort. And everybody has a different scenario of what effort is, right? They do. Everybody's got not a scenario. They've got a different interpretation of what effort is. Mm-hmm. I remember many, many years ago, I wrote a post, and I should pull it out because it's one of my favorite. We live in a society. Think about this for a second, everybody. We live in a society that chastises too much work, overworking, working too much, right? We chastise people for that concept, or people ask us to do that, but then celebrate the greatest people. Yes. So what triggered this for me was Tiger Woods, right? Yeah. When he's done playing, now granted, he's done, his career's over, whatever. When he back in his heyday, when he was done with a round of golf at a championship or major, it didn't matter. He would go to the driving range, hit 1,000 balls. Best in the world, worth billions of dollars or hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, Nike contracts, he'd never pick up a club again in his life and not worry about money. So there's no money motivator there. There's not, right? So he would put in that work. There are most people want to be, quote unquote, want to be good golfers who won't hit 1,000 balls at all. Like go there to the range and hit 1,000 balls. They maybe hit 2 buckets. There's maybe 50 balls, 75 balls in a bucket. They'll do 150 balls, be there for a half hour, an hour, and be like, all right, I did good today. And they'll go home. So one of the things I do to people in these situations when they're not performing is I say, all right, and this is the behavior aspect of it. I say to them, Do you think you're working hard? Yes. All right. You think you're putting in a nice effort? Yes. All right. Let me ask you this question. If by September 15th, if you didn't hit your goal, you would die, what would you do different? And you can't tell people you're going to die. You can't lie. You can't cheat. You can't manipulate. It still has to be the same thing you're doing now. What would you do different? And let me tell you how much more creative people are, how much more they work, how many more calls to make, how more organized they'd be, because now their life is on the line. So I don't expect people to work every single day like your life is on the line. That's untenable. But what it shows you is the space between how you're actually working and how much more you're leaving on the table. And leaving just a half of that or a quarter of that or 2/3 of that. And so those are the types of conversations I have. So I'll leave it at that. And then I have a process I'll share in a second after Becc goes.
Well, I couldn't echo strongly enough what you're saying. And I think that we demonize people who work hard. But then to your point,
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Steph Curry hits a 3-pointer and we're like, he's the moon. And I'm like, well, dude, do you know how much practice that took? And so I'm like, please, when I see people doing that, I usually see people projecting their mediocre standards onto other people to get them to slow down because they don't want to run as hard. And I'm like, I can't tell you how many people who have been like, oh, Becc, you work so hard, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's my pace. That's the pace that I want to go, because I'm like, the race to be an expert in anything is 10,000 hours. So I'm like, if I do 8 hours a day versus 1 hour a day, like, and that's up to me. Like, now I do think that there are work standards, but in my opinion, and I'm probably going to get blown up and land on CNN for all the wrong reasons for this, but I'm like, I don't think people work hard enough, in my opinion. I think
no question.
They like carry around the like, oh, I don't work hard enough, I'm not good enough. And I'm like, if you just supplanted all that mental energy by just going out the door and going on the run or doing whatever it was, like, you would solve most of your problems. So I think people give themselves far too many excuses. They're like, oh, well, it's raining today. And I'm like, well, you still can run even though it's raining, Becc. And when I don't do that, it's like, own up to that too. And so I think we are breeding a culture of like, oh, it's okay, you tried. Like, you tried, and it's just causing. I worry about this subject a lot. I know that we're on coaching, but I worry about this subject a lot, that I'm like, you shouldn't hold someone back whenever they do want to get better at something. I'm like, for instance, right now, I need to learn French. It's 580 hours until you're fluent. I've covered 200 since I've been here. Why? Because I freaking want to learn French and not look like an idiot anymore. I want to be able to order coffee. And so I'm like, I'm staying up at night. I'm walking around. I'm tripping and I'm falling and I'm looking dumb in everyday conversations. But I'm trying to make my way there because I want to do that. So it's like saying, oh, okay, well, a normal person would only study an hour a day. And I'm like, I don't think I'm better than everyone else in that. I don't think I'm worse. I'm like, I just want to hit that clip more early, than this pre-recommended plan. So point being, my opinion in a nutshell is we don't work hard enough from what I've seen. I'm like, just stop talking, stop giving all your yip yap and go outbound. Stop talking, stop giving all your yip yap and just go read about it. Go figure out how to do it. I should have saved this for the rant. Point being, the second step in my head, in my opinion, is to, and I will give attribution here. I learned this from Keenan. Once you understand and have observed what they're doing incorrectly, a very important step is to describe to them what they're doing that's incorrect. Because otherwise, in a lot of cases, they won't know. That's my second step. Keenan.
Thank you. That's what I was going to cover. I was really going to go into the observe, describe, prescribe. Yes, absorb and apply. So yes, that's my coaching framework. You got to find observable moments. That's why I'm a big fan of Gong and a big fan of Chorus. That's an observable moment. So I'm also a big fan of noted analytics, which allows you to observe the outcomes of the data that the reps capture in a call inside of Salesforce in easy fashion. So that allows you to describe what you see, and then allows you to say, all right, these are some prescriptions that I would do differently. And then you observe their absorption. Did they get it? And then you see if they're applying it. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Ding, 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 ding. We are done with this segment. Right on schedule. Now on to the last segment of this podcast, which is
Oh, listen, just one more thing.
perfect.
Didn't say it, did it? Just one more thing? I didn't hear it.
It had unless I'm mistaken, it should have had the audio of Columbo saying, "Oh, just one more."
Oh,
thing."
yeah. I heard something, but I couldn't hear it here. But yeah, okay. Yeah, good work.
Well, this segment is where Becc and Keenan share with us what's on their mind and give us their closing thoughts. So the first one to give their just one more thing is Becc this week. So Becc, what is your one more thing?
Well, I think I was going to give Keenan the option. Your two choices are I double down on accountability, or I can talk about where I think the industry is headed and influencers' responsibility in that mix and what I'm worried about. Your gentleman's choice.
The first one.
Yeah, I'll go another minute on it, and then I'm going to pass. You're either going to be left at the end of your life with results or excuses.
Ooh.
You really are. And you know those excuses weren't real. Just like I know when I'm saying them. I didn't learn French before I came here. Why? I made excuses. And I'm paying for it now. I should have been doing that. And I think you do yourself more of a disservice in taking the time to generate those excuses than just saying nothing. So it's like, I see this in 1,000 different ways. I see it in 1,000 different playouts, for myself included. Again, I'm certainly not perfect. This is a huge example of it. I knew that I was moving here for months, and I had the Rosetta Stone course, but I didn't have the time to do it. Why? Because I didn't make the time to do it. And I told myself that. So in a nutshell, excuses affect the person who's giving them more than anyone else, because you know when they weren't real, and you know when it was just you rattling off some reason to justify whatever you were doing, and in most cases you are not doing. You are not outbounding. You are not making those calls. You didn't read. You didn't do your homework. You didn't whatever. And so my plea is to not do what I did and to just look at that dead on and to make a plan and not spend the time giving yourself the heartburn of just coming up with all the reasons why you couldn't do something to convince someone else of why you weren't able to do it. It's bizarre.
Convince yourself.
Yeah, they don't believe you anyway. Let me roll the tape forward. And you don't believe it yourself when you look in the mirror.
But this is 100%. But I'm going to disagree with the last piece. I think people actually convince themselves.
Which is more dangerous.
Yeah, no, that's my point. Like, they've actually convinced themselves. They believe their own rhetoric. I think the people who know they're making excuses sometimes move like you did. You got there and you're like, I got to stop this, right? So you were on that line, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But I think most people, when they make those excuses, 90% they take to their grave with full belief embedded in their psyche that they were screwed. Because that story had to be told over and over and over, or they couldn't live with themselves.
Believe it. So dangerous.
They have to believe it.
So dangerous, and everything. It's just like, own it, identify what you want, go after it, or don't, but stop talking. Stop talking about it, okay? Go do it or don't, and own it. Either way, that's my rant.
All right, Keenan, what about you? What's your one more thing?
One last thing. So will be nothing as powerful and as inspiring as Beck's. So, but with that, I was playing with ChatGPT today. And I think most of you know this, or most of you don't. I don't know. I don't know if you know this or not. But ChatGPT its data stops in September of 2019. 2019. So if you want anything that's come since then, basically 4 years now, or 3.5 years, she or her, or it or him or whatever, don't pull from it. So I think that's a problem, because basically it's dealing with someone who's dealing with old information. Now, look, all the different uses I think are great, right? Especially a lot of the Greg Christian, you say 2021, but ChatGPT literally just told me. Hold on, I think I deleted.
This is something I don't know.
Yeah, it told me, said, hey, I'm sorry. I'm only up to September 2019, but I digress. Maybe it is 20. No, it's 2019 is what it told me. So I can't remember. It doesn't matter. The point being is it's old data. So when you ask it certain things, like you say, like, what is the best car I should be looking at? Or, you're asking for its opinion. It's only going to give you opinion on data that was in there that's 2 to 3 years old or even 4 years old. That's not good. That's not good. So as much as we are excited about it and we're driving it places and I'm a fan, be careful about how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it also got to me, though, what no one's talking about, and I'd love anybody's insight, is I want to understand how to train this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that is the biggest value, is learning how to train this thing. Because I ran a search, who are the top sales influencers? Me or Gap Selling didn't show up. So then I asked her, or hit, or whatever, why? And it said, well, because these Gap influencers were, these sales influencers had these traits. No, I said these traits. I said, well, how did you come up with that criteria? Like I did a Gap Selling this thing. How did you come up with the criteria? And it gave me some stupid answer. Then I said, why doesn't it include Keenan? And then it said, Keenan's really good. And then it gave up my name. It said Keenan CH, also known as CHP. I said, who's Keenan CHP? And it says he's a certified financial planner. I said, no, he's not. And they said, oh, thanks for the correction. Then I asked the correct question again later and said I was a financial planner again. So it's got shit wrong.
Yeah.
It's got shit wrong. And yeah, he goes, I actually got in a fight with.
I did the same thing. I did the same thing about personalization at scale and Becc Holland. And I was like, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I want the same person.
So just keep in mind two things. One, when you run the searches and you ask for information, keep in mind that it's not up to date. And number two, if you're serious about this, pay close attention, or if someone knows how to do it, the winners are those people who can influence it. I'm already looking at chat like Google. Google's coming up with their own, but they should be freaking out, because fewer and fewer people are going to go to Google to figure something out. They're going to go to chat, right, to find out information, and then they can just go get that information, right? Like, what's the best sales book? People put that in Google right now, right? So there's going to be an SEO concept, let's call it concept, for ChatGPT. How do I get this thing to spew out stuff about me, my company, my sales methodology, etc., that is accurate, and one, and two, makes me look better or puts me in the top searches or gives me more exposure? How do you do that? Because that's what people are going to want to do. Mm-hmm.
And well, that's our podcast.
Yes. Oh, by the way, Greg, I asked the question. I said, how do you learn, and do you add new information? Thinking as I give it new information, it does something with it. And it came back and said, no, I don't. I can only pull the information from 2019. So it will tell you it's learning, but if you go back and ask the question again, it'll repeat the original wrong answer.
I looked at metrics. So I said metrics for a marketer, and it got them wrong, or a sales rep or SDR, and it got them wrong. And I had to learn how to basically code on what words to say. Finally, it took me 4 or 5 tries to actually get the correct metric.
Now go back and ask it again. I bet it gives it to you the first way it did the first time.
Yeah,
it doesn't store it. It doesn't store it. At least it didn't for me. I thought I was training it a little, and then I went back and asked the question again, and it told me my name was, because it said, oh, you're right. The name isn't Keenan CHP.
Go to bed, Jim.
It said, thanks for that piece of information. And then when I asked who the author of Gap Selling was, it said Keenan CHP. It went right back to what I just told it wasn't.
That's what
after it acknowledged that it was wrong.
So I would have said back. I'd been like, it's 2 a.m., Jim. Go to bed.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. You've been listening to the Sales Podcast. Oh, my God. I'm tired. And I got to go do a training right now. I'm 1 minute late. Y'all have been listening to the Sales Top to Bottom Podcast. I'm your host, Keenan.
And I'm Becc. Au revoir, everyone. Bonne soirée.
Peace out.